This is FarmLand. Coming up, Pat Deering, Fine Gael TD and Chairman of the Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, and Eddie Punch, the General Secretary of the ICSA, will be in studio to discuss Budget 2019 and its implications for farmers. Eddie Downey, the former President of the IFA, will be here to talk about the future of farm organisations and why he thinks radical reform is needed at the IFA. But first, what do farmers think about the new €20 million beef environmental efficiency pilot scheme that was announced in Budget 2019 this week? Niall Claffey has this report.
The new beef environmental and efficiency pilot was announced in this week's budget. Under the scheme, farmers will receive €40 per suckler cow in return for weight data in order to achieve a more efficient suckler herd. In the past, schemes such as the BDGP, which also strives to improve genetic merit of a herd, were heavily criticised. However, Shane and Joanne Bauer, who run a pedigree Albrecht herd in County Westmeath, believe that the BDGP is very important.
We've been involved at BDGP from the beginning. The package itself probably wasn't sold as well as it could have been. There was a definite lack of education around it. But for us, we definitely feel that it's a very positive move forward. There's a focus on efficiency, a focus on calving interval, how to produce beef as efficiently as possible.
The Bowers believe the new scheme will be beneficial, but farmers need to understand why they are weighing their animals and recording this data.
It is a help, but if people aren't going to, if they need money to make the efficiencies, they might just take the money and not do what's to make their farm more efficient.
Yeah, I think for us, because we've been weighing calves from the beginning anyway, the €40 is like a little bonus. So we're getting paid for something that we've already been doing. But I think unless an education package comes with it, that people understand why they're weighing their calves, why there's a need to record the birth weight of a calf and to move that on then and to get a concept of the weight gain that's involved from birth to weaning and whether or not that's efficient. That education package needs to be rolled out to farmers, some idea of professional development around that.
In recent years, industry experts have outlined that the recording of data from suckler cows, and indeed their progeny, will lead to a more efficient herd. By doing so, Shane knows the performance of his animals.
We definitely recommend it because you know how each cow is performing by the weight data of our calf throughout the year. So that's why we've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years. And it proved its worth with us, so we cull what isn't performing right then and we hold on to what is.
Before this week's budget, there were calls for payments of €200 per suckler cow. These calls were left unanswered, and Joanne is not persuaded that this was the way forward.
I suppose you could argue it's never enough. If it were a bigger number, one would worry that it's actually only going to create a false floor and the inefficiencies will still exist in farming and in producing a good quality animal for as little as possible.
An allocation of €23 million as part of an ANC payment for disadvantaged areas was also announced in this week's budget, bringing the ANC budget back to 2008 levels. This payment will make a positive difference to Shane and Joanne's enterprise.
Definitely benefit our farm because we've marginal ground and you just can't make as much profit out of as you would in good land, so it is needed in this type of ground anyway.
Yeah, every little helps, I suppose, but it's definitely a bonus that we're going to be happy to receive. We're certainly not going to complain about it.
I'm joined now by Pat Deering, the Chair of the Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, and by Eddie Punch, the General Secretary of the Irish Cattle Sheep Farmers Association. Thank you both for coming in. I just want to discuss the budget and to get into more detail on what's in it exactly for farmers. We had the announcement of the €20 million beef environmental efficiency pilot. Eddie, what is your response to that? What's in it for farmers? How do you think it will work?
Okay, Claire, broadly we welcome it. We in 2016 actually suggested that weighing calves would be a measure that could attract more funding for farmers under the BDGP. And this is about the provision of real data that can help drive better knowledge about which cows perform and which cows don't. We want to, of course, have some engagement now with the department on the detail of this, because making sure that it's works as smoothly and as efficiently as possible for farmers is going to be critical to its success. But as a general principle, I think it's the right way to go. I think it's some extra money for suckler farmers. It's not going to make a huge difference. We still need the beef industry to step up to the plate in terms of beef price. But it is, I think, a good use of, a relatively small amount of money which will deliver some benefit to suckler farmers.
How do you think it will work? How will it be implemented?
Well, clearly it's about weighing calves and cows. Some farmers have their own weighing scales, a lot don't. So here we've got to make sure that weighing scales are readily available to all the farmers who don't have them without it being a cost exercise. We've got to make sure that the €40 goes direct to the farmers who need it, because we've had too many schemes in the past where money leaked out of the system paying advisors and contractors and so on. So we want to make this as simple and straightforward as possible, that the farmer with 20, 30 cows gets the full benefit of the €40 per calf. And that's going to involve, I think, a little bit of negotiation between the farm representatives and the department to make sure it is a streamlined system. But in general, I think, look, it's some extra money for the suckler herd, and that's okay.
Pat, in your position as chair of the Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, you're made very aware of all the different issues affecting farmers across the country. Do you think this is a good budget for farmers?
Yeah, I think first of all, the actual scheme that we talk about, the beef scheme, is an acknowledgement that the sucklers and the beef herd, beef farmers have been going through a difficult time in the past number of years. And in advance of the budget, there was a lot of talk about what could be done. And I welcome the fact that this particular scheme has come in now and the way it has come in. I think it is, first of all, I acknowledge the fact there's been a difficulty there. But I think we have to go down, or continue to go down, the beef data scheme, or a system whereby we get more data. And data is all about data. We hear a lot of talk about climate change and greenhouse gas emissions and so on. I think we have to continue down that efficiency road. And this is a prime example of how it can be done, weighing the calf and the cow before weaning. And I think that can be done in a reasonably straightforward way. I would agree with Eddie that there's probably still needs to be a little bit of teasing out done before we get to the actual conclusion of the logistics of how it can be operated. I could see it being a very straightforward process. In the event of some farmers would have, some of the bigger farmers may have their own weighing scales. In the event that there's no scales available on the farm, the proposition is that there will be scales available at the local co-op where the farmer could get a loan of that scales, take it home with him, weigh the animal, and then send back in the data once that was completed. I think it's an important starting point of where we go. The €40 will be helpful. As I say, it's an acknowledgement of difficulty in the sector. I think it's probably a realistic amount of money that is available at the moment.
But in terms of the practicalities of it and inputting that data, how will it be monitored? How can you be sure that the data going in will be accurate, or that the system wouldn't be manipulated in any way?
Well, there is going to be, my understanding is there is going to be a farm inspection process built into the whole scheme, whereby an inspector would be available to I suppose, inspect a certain percentage of people who would make the application, and that would obviously make sure that the thing is reasonably straightforward and it wouldn't be manipulated in any shape or form.
Eddie, the BDGP scheme over the last few years has been criticised in some circumstances. Some farmers are sceptical of it, sceptical of the level of how it works, and the level of maybe understanding on the BDGP scheme is not it's not maybe something that farmers feel very confident of at the moment in some parts of the country, and I know in other parts it is working and farmers are happy with it. But in terms of the communication on this, is there a lot to be learned on how the BDGP scheme has been communicated to farmers, and now you have this BEEP scheme coming in, and how that's going to be communicated? Do you have concerns there on how farmers actually interpret the scheme and what it is and what it can do?
Yeah, look, everybody knows there are problems with the BDGP scheme, and I think from the outset I would say that the problem was that it was pushed forward without adequate consultation and road testing with people who would have understood the pros and cons of the scheme. There is still, I suppose, a lot of, resentment around the fact that star ratings can go up and down, and people don't understand why that is so. And I think that in the longer term, I would like to see the BDGP scheme if we're going to have it, another round of it, being reformed in a significant way to take account that not everybody is looking just to produce this maternal cow. Some people are looking to breed a weanling for export, and I think that should be built into the scheme. The new BEEP is about weights, so it's a simpler sell to explain what's going on here. Weights you can't argue with weights. Everybody knows when you sell your weanling, whatever the weanling weighs has the huge impact obviously in the price along with the quality. And I think that there was too much focus on maternal traits under the BDGP. I'm not saying they're not relevant, but as every suckler farmer knows, when you sell your weanling, weight and quality are the real metrics that decide whether you make money or not. And I think also a lot of suckler farmers who have heavy continental cows have felt a little bit, I suppose, threatened by the BDGP scheme. And yet they know that when they sell those cull cows, they make a lot of money compared to maybe lighter cows. So I think going forward, if we are to have a rerun of this scheme in the next round of CAP funding, we have to have much more consultation between the department, ICBF and farm representatives to represent the fact that a lot of suckler farmers have a very specific strategy for breeding stock, and you can't dictate to them what kind of cows they should have because people know themselves what makes the money.
Pat, do you want to come in on that? Because this will be bolted on, as Minister Creedy said, to the BDGP. In terms of communicating it to farmers, can you learn from what have you learned from the communication on the BDGP on how changes are needed on this one?
Yeah, I would agree with Eddie on that point. I think there just needs to be, I suppose, a communication strategy. There's no doubt that the previous scheme, the BDGP scheme, got off to a very rocky start, and some farmers didn't get into it for their own particular reasons, and for us it got a very bad start, a bad name. But I do think going forward there needs to be a selling point, more selling of it. It has a lot to offer. I do think it requires a little bit of adjustment as we go forward again. If it is going to be part of a new rule development in the next CAP, I do think there needs to be more flexibility in it. But in order to have a scheme of a similar type scheme, it's going to have to be an environmental type scheme, obviously. And I would agree with Eddie's point in regards to maternals, the maternal part of it. That needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. I do think the biggest problem was not enough consultation. There's no doubt about that, and consultation is very important. As we go forward with the BEEP scheme, I think there needs to be a little bit of consultation before it's actually rolled out from a practical point of view. And I think we can learn a lot from the past. Consultation was the biggest difficulty in the past, and in our own committee we've had ICBF before us, we've had the farm organisations dealing with this on a couple of occasions the last couple of years since the scheme came out, and we found it useful. There is no doubt that going forward data is the name of the game. If you look at the dairy sector over maybe 20 years ago, they introduced the data initiatives as well, and they've probably learned a lot from that in the last number of years. And I firmly believe that over the next number of years, the data that is collected in the beef data genomics scheme and with the weights that are going to be introduced now in the next scheme will be hugely beneficial to the whole sector as we move forward.
Eddie, the suckler sector has been the major topic of concern over the last couple of months. Is the announcement of this scheme really sufficient enough to alleviate concerns over the future sustainability of the sector?
No, look, there are huge challenges ahead for the suckler sector. I think we have, of course, to look at the fact that live exports are critical to the future of the suckler sector. And whatever way, you adjust schemes, we've got a real problem that we're not selling enough live exports of heavy weanlings to Italy. The Turkish market, there was so much hope in this earlier this year, has collapsed because of political developments out there, and we can't solve that easily overnight. And I would say this, that from our point of view in ICSA, it's not how many, it's not whether we have 1 million suckler cows in Ireland that's the important issue. It's whether the people who are in sucklers can actually make a profit out of it. And I do worry that if we have focused on maintaining numbers as being the main measure of success, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Because, what is the point in having 1 million suckler cows and nobody making any money out of them, versus having maybe 700,000 or 800,000 suckler cows and adequate markets and adequate demand for those weanlings. So I think the focus on absolute numbers is the wrong focus. But we need to look at markets for live export markets, and we also need to put more pressure on the beef industry to pay proper rewards for heavy U-grade carcasses as well. And if we don't have those things right, there's no point in I suppose, incentivising people to keep more cows than they would otherwise do.
What about a premium for suckler beef?
We had it before and it didn't work in terms of a coupled premium. But we need to look at the marketplace here. And I think there's too much focus on this 2 steaks for a tenner that you get in supermarkets. The meat industry has to work hard to find real markets for these high quality U-grade cattle. And remember, when Ireland is marketing its beef, when you see Bord Bia promotional material, you don't see Holstein or Jersey Cross animals on the promotional material. It's all about the animal welfare benefits of the suckler herd, the cow and the calf happy in the field grazing. And I think we need to do more in marketing that as being a premium product so that we can pay a premium price for suckler beef. And if we can't do that, then all the schemes in the world aren't going to make a difference.
And Pat, also in the short term, will this scheme benefit in the pockets of farmers?
It will be a help. I think the whole beef industry, there's a number of different elements to it, as Eddie has outlined, and I think this is only one small part of it. I do think that, as Eddie said, the factories have to play their part, the meat industry obviously has to play their part. I think supermarkets going forward to play their part. And I think the whole trading practices around Europe, and we see legislation introduced now at the moment within Europe, that has a very important part to play. I personally don't think it is strong enough. We at our committee for a number of years now, and in the previous Dáil term as well, we had produced a report with a number of recommendations which is regarding having an independent arbitrator in the whole sector. I think that is something that needs to be looked at again. Again, that's another part of the whole industry. The actual efficiency in the whole sector is important. It's not all about, in my opinion, having a couple of payment for a particular cow, because if we have that, I think we're down a very dangerous road before in that regard. It didn't achieve a lot of success in the short term, in the very short term maybe, but in the long term it didn't. At the end of the day, we need more markets. We need more cattle leaving this country, going to different markets, and the live export, I think, is crucial in that regard. I think we need to get wherever the markets can be found, we need to source them as soon as possible. We're in a difficult situation at the moment with Turkey. That's not going to be addressed in the short term for obvious reasons. The whole political situation there is very unstable at the moment, and that's a disadvantage for us at the moment. So to find alternative markets is difficult, but that needs to happen in order to get a market for the end product that we have. That's the essential part of it all. As I said, the payment at the moment will be a help, but it is only a short-term solution to the overall problem that we have.
And what about on the monitoring and kind of the policing of this new beef scheme? If if the data that's inputted isn't accurate, or if there are discrepancies, would farmers potentially face a cut in their single farm payments, or where do you envisage that?
Well, I think we're going down the road a little bit further now than that has been sorted out at the moment, and I would like to think that the new beef scheme will be reasonably straightforward. I'd like to also think that the farmers wouldn't be trying to manipulate the scheme in any shape or form. There is obviously a financial benefit for them by submitting the relevant data. Whether I would like to think that they wouldn't be penalised in their single or their basic payment as a result of that, but also in the event that there is false information submitted, there has to be a penalty as well. How that will be administered, I'm not quite sure at the moment, but I'm sure that can be worked out in conjunction with the farm organisations as we move forward towards the early part of next year. And as I said at the beginning, it is intended that this scheme is expected to be rolled out in early summer next year, with payments due by this time next year, which is important.
Eddie, there were a number of other announcements in the budget yesterday. The ANC payments are back up now to the pre-2008 levels. There was announcements on stamp duty, and what was your take on the other announcements for the sector?
We welcome the return of the ANC to its original level. It's 10 years since the severe cutbacks at the time of the collapse, so it's high time that was brought back to its original level, and that payment is really important because that's real money into the hands of disadvantaged farmers all over Ireland. So we certainly welcome that. The extension of stamp duty relief, the extension of stock relief. These are important, and I'm glad to see they're there for the next 3 years. I would say then in the taxation side of it, I'm a bit disappointed that the earned income tax credit has only been increased by 200 in the last two budgets, because that's still a discrimination against full-time self-employed farmers and other business people as well in terms of their tax liability compared to someone who has a PAYE income. And I think, you know, that was originally, I think the intention was that would be equalised in 3 years, but at the rate we're going now, it's going to take 7 years. So I'm a bit disappointed in that. I think there's an increase as well in the Category A threshold for capital acquisitions tax of €10,000. We'd like to see that happening every year, because that threshold was originally way higher. It came down very low, and now it's been brought back up again. It's important because you don't want to see young farmers taking over a family farm. You know, you want to minimise the risk that they're going to have a big tax liability. So I think that needs to be pushed up, and maybe a little bit more ambitious in the budgets to come.
Pat, obviously Brexit played a big role in this budget as well. Can you give us some more detail on how it was framed to mitigate against the challenge that is Brexit coming?
Yeah, I suppose there's two big challenges going forward from an agriculture sector in particular. Obviously Brexit has one and climate change is probably the other, and one of them is coming faster than the other at the moment. And Brexit, as we know, the uncertainty around that is the big issue. Another low-cost interest loan has been introduced for the agricultural sector, and that will be done through the Department of Business and Enterprise. The Minister, Heather Humphreys, will be highlighting that as we go forward, and that's a matter of making sure that the businesses or agribusiness are Brexit-proofed and ready for action in that regard. The taxation measures that were introduced should also be help. I tend to agree with Eddie as well. There is a bit more ground to go in that regard, but I think over time we will get there. There's one other issue that I was a bit disappointed personally that wasn't introduced, and I think it could be very helpful for the dairy sector in particular, is another income volatility measure that was being proposed by ICSA in particular. I think there's a lot of merit in it, whereby in a good year you could park X amount of money into a particular account, and that could be used in a bad year. Now, I still think that has a lot of merit. The dairy sector in particular is a sector that has probably more volatility and will have more volatility as we go forward. It is predominantly, I suppose, a dairy sector issue, but maybe in time other sectors may have the same issue. But I think that is something that could be considered again. I know I would have had a number of meetings with Pascal Donoghue about this in the advance of the budget, and it's something maybe that could be looked at again as we go forward.
Eddie, there was no increase made on carbon tax, but is that something that your organisation is concerned about down the line?
Well, there's a few issues here, Claire. I think simply adding to the price of diesel makes no impact in terms of climate change. But what you are doing is basically taking more money off people who have no other alternative. And in particular in rural Ireland, the price of diesel is something you can do nothing about. You need diesel for agricultural enterprises. Most people in rural areas drive diesel cars because it's the logical thing to do. And just simply increasing a carbon tax, you're pretending that you're doing something about climate change, but all you're doing is actually taking more money out of the pockets of rural people. So I think we need to look at that in a much more integrated way. And I think, there's a lot can be done in terms of using more biofuels, in terms of looking at renewable energy. We got to have practical things that give people real alternatives to simply burning fossil fuel. But just imposing an extra carbon tax, that's just a taxation measure.
Finally, Pat, I just wanted to mention that the National Ploughing Championships was announced this week, that Carlow is for the site for 2019. Were you surprised to get the confirmation?
No, I wasn't a bit. Thanks for asking the question, Claire. First of all, I wasn't a bit surprised. As you know, I got myself into a little bit of hot water in the last couple of weeks for welcoming people to Carlow next year. I'm delighted it's obviously coming to Carlow. I'm looking forward to welcoming everybody to Carlow next year. It's a good site, and as I said previously, a lot of work has been done on this site by a lot of people over the last period of time, and I'm sure the National Ploughing Association will be very happy next year. Hopefully the weather will be good and people will be able to enjoy themselves when they come to Ballantrae and Fella next year.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Eddie, for joining us for our budget special. So next, are farm organisations still delivering for farmers? Niall Claffey has this report from Ballyjamesduff Mart.
Are you a member of a farming organisation?
I'm not.
You're not? And do you think they're
What
good?
would you be a member of a farming organisation for? So they're good for nothing.
Yeah.
Look at the state of the price of beef.
Yeah?
Huh?
You wouldn't recommend being a member of any organisation?
I don't know, but sure, someone to do something for you. How is the load of the cattle drops away down in price at this time of the year, and farmers, the hardship they got doing, cutting silage and everything, and they getting it one, and they've cut the prices way down.
Are you a member of a farming organisation?
Yeah, I suppose I am.
Yeah. Which one are you a member of?
Oh, it used to be the ICSA anyway.
Okay. And how do you think are they good help farmers?
Well, I don't know. Is there any of them helping them a whole pile at the present time?
Okay. And do you find it benefits your enterprise?
Oh, not a whole pile. No.
Do you reckon some things need to be changed within the farm organisations?
Sure, there probably would. There probably would be, surely. Plenty of things to be changed.
You a member of a farming organisation?
Would be.
And do you think they're good benefit for farmers?
Who is?
The farm organisations?
No.
What would you like to see happen? Would you like to see there been some changes?
I'd like to see. I think IFA was stronger when they were NFA, when they blocked the roads going to Dublin. They meant business that time. Today, no. They're weak.
Are you a member of a farming organisation?
No.
No. Do you think they're a benefit to farmers?
Didn't benefit from the last that was in.
Are you a member of a farm organisation?
The IFA.
Yeah. And do you think they're good for farmers?
Ah, yes. Look, it would be good, yeah.
And when did you join?
I'm with them this must be 20 years.
And are they in a position to make a difference?
Then I suppose they are, like, they be listened to, do you know what I mean? They have clout, like, and
Would you recommend maybe younger people to get involved?
it's no harm being with them anyway, do you know what I mean? Because if you want, like, you will be advised and all that. It's important, I suppose, to be a member with them, you know what I mean?
Are you a member of a farming organisation? And do you think there would be benefits, or what would be your opinion?
Out of being a member?
Yeah.
Oh, why wouldn't it be a benefit? Yeah.
Why would it be a benefit?
What's it to speak up for you, wouldn't it?
Do you think they're in a position to make a difference?
Oh, there'd be a help anyway, so everyone that speaks is a help.
So are you a member of a farming organisation? No. And do you think they're a benefit for farmers?
I mean, on this. Yeah, I do, yeah.
Would you recommend people to get involved in them?
I'd say so, yeah.
Do you think that they're in a position to make a difference?
Well, we hope so. We know with the budget today, they were all talking about they were looking for this, that and the other. We know whether they got it today or not.
We're joined now by former president of the IFA, Eddie Downey, and we also contacted the current president of the IFA, Joe Healy, to contribute to the show, but due to prior commitments, he was unable to make it. Eddie, over the last year at this stage, there has been various calls for the €200 payment for the suckler sector, and Minister Creed on numerous occasions stated that it wasn't a runner largely because of our obligations on the climate change side. And this week we saw in the budget that it didn't happen. It was that call by farm organisations was largely ignored. Do you think that farm organisations still have the same clout today as they had in previous decades?
Well, I wouldn't agree with you. First of all, clear on the fact that it was ignored. I think, you know, there's 40 euros there on the suckler calf, or on the to be paid for the suckler cow. That brings it up to €120. It's a step. You know, you have to build and use building blocks to get further up, move the thing forward. It's not enough. It's not enough to save the suckler sector, which is definitely under pressure. So, you know, I think the farm organisations still have clout. They use their clout as best they possibly can. They're a lobby organisation. Every lobby organisation is designed to fail. Because you lobby, you know, the reality is you don't always get everything you ask for. And you say that they still have power, but yet at a recent meeting down in Waterford last week, you clearly called for a radical reform of the IFA in particular, and that you think dramatic changes are needed. Why you have that opinion? Well, first of all, that was an IFA meeting. Secondly, it was a direct question from the floor. I was asked by a young farmer at what I thought, whether I thought IFA needed to be reformed, whether I thought there should be changes in it. And yes, IFA needs radical reform. It does need to be changed. I think we saw we had a review done 3 years ago by called the Con-Lucy report. That was done by people looking backwards to where they saw the organisation had been in the past. We needed a review. We now need, and it was staff-based, we now need a review which is looking forward. And it should be member-based. I'm a member of IFA. We own this organisation. It is our organisation and it's to represent us. Therefore, it's the view of the farmer that should be represented there, or it should be organised in the base that helps the farmer in the best possible way, not that protects the staff in the best possible way. So, I think that's an area which we can, there needs to be massive changes there. Massive. I think the manner in which IFA communicates, the manner in which we interact with the members is critically important, and we're not doing, I believe, and I'm saying we are not doing that as well as we should be doing. We need to embrace technology, we need to embrace the smartphone, we need to get the information out to people quicker, and we need to demonstrate to them exactly what and what we're doing for them on a daily basis.
Can you be more specific, Eddie, on the changes that you would like to see brought in? You say embrace technology, but can you be more specific on exactly where you think that there is room for improvement? Well,
I think it just needs a shake up. It needs to be operated on. We lost a lot of young staff from the organisation. We need to bring new young staff into it and bring vibrancy into it on that basis. I think the guys on the ground, the regional development officers, I think they're the absolute key pins of IFA. And I think they're the most important people within the organisation in that they interact on a daily basis with the members. And the local staff and the local officers, absolutely crucial that they are upgraded and given more responsibility and their role is recognised better. I think the idea of having meetings for the sake of meetings has to stop. I think we need to have less meetings but more focused ones that where we and on specific subjects on a regular basis, rather than just on every subject and just going on and on, continuously repeating the same thing over and over.
And Eddie, you've been involved in the IFA for the last 2 decades, nearly 3 decades. And as you say, you are an IFA member, former president of the organisation. What do you feel that you did to make those changes, to bring in those changes, to move things forward?
Well, I think as president of the association, I think we were in a pivotal position right when things turned upside down. But I think we were ready to move forward with a review of the organisation. When a president's in the job for 2 years, the 3rd and 4th year is when you can make changes. That's when you're in the position, you're in a comfortable place, a reasonably comfortable place to move on and make those changes. I think now is a good time for IFA to make some of those changes that we had planned to put in place.
And is a lot of it about ensuring the sustainability of the farm orgs, and not just the IFA, but all farm organisations, to sustain them for future generations? Because as we know, the challenges facing agriculture, the challenges facing farmers are coming thick and fast.
Well, I think we're in a huge position of change. I think we're talking about, robots on farms milking cows, robots in fields doing the tilling, doing the work. The technological changes we're going to see over the next number of years is going to be absolutely huge. And I think the farmers, the future, the young farmers coming forward, they won't interact with what we currently have as a model for farm organisations. I think they want a different type of leadership. They want to see that their views are recognised and that their needs are put forward as on issues. I think it's time that we just need to look at it completely different, and we also need to communicate to farmers as to what we're trying to do within those farm organisations.
You mentioned down in Kilmacthomas at that IFA meeting last week about discussion groups, farmer discussion groups online, and different purchaser groups as well, and the opportunities that you see there for young farmers to become more engaged. Is that, and do you see that area as almost kind of a threat to the political farm lobby groups? Is that kind of where you see political opinions being developed at a younger age, maybe?
I think, look at Claire, All my life, I've never seen a threat. I've only seen opportunities. And the actual fact that farmers are going to discussion groups, they're being part of discussion groups, buying groups, discussion groups, selling groups, that's the area we need to go, producer organisations. The fact that they're developing is good. Now, that's an opportunity for farmer organisations to work with them and to interact with them, so that the first item on the agenda for them every time is, what's the IFA doing, or what's farmer organisations doing for me and for us as a group, and how are they representing us? People from those farmer organisations going in and discussing for maybe 15-20 minutes with those people, with the discussion groups, portion group, whatever group it is, when they start their discussion. Then move on and let them get on with the business. Then you're relevant to them, and we need to be in that relevant zone.
In the last couple of weeks, we've seen that another splinter group has kind of emerged from the IFA. Now, I know it's not largely it's not all IFA members, but they're largely IFA. That's the Beef Plan group. Were you surprised to see that group emerge, and what does that signal to you that there is this breakaway? Because obviously in your tenure as president, the INHFA was set up back in 2015. So what do these breakaway groups say to you?
Well, it's always difficult when you're trying to manage the political system, the politics that's within farm organisation, and politics exists within IFA and all other organisations. So, different people get disgruntled at different, and they move in a different direction. The job is to try and hold them together. Yes, the INHFA, they got themselves set up. They're a specific group trying to represent a group of farmers in difficult circumstances. I had a lot of discussions with them at the time, and they decided to go in the direction they did. Fair play, off they go and do their job, and I'm happy. I have no problem with that. The beef group at the moment, some of them are meat people. I know a lot of these people very, very well, and I've had a lot of discussion with them. I encouraged them to go down the road of producer groups. When I was president of IFA, met with them on a number of occasions. I'm not surprised that they put forward a plan. I think that's good, and I think we need a plan going forward. But a plan from just the producer point of view is worthless unless it's a fully integrated plan. The beef industry is in trouble. The beef industry is in a very difficult place. The farmer is getting very, very small returns from it. What we need is an integrated plan that works from the producer right through to the processor to the retailer, and it has to work the whole way through that system. When we were at the Beef Forum, I was part and parcel of setting that up. We were very, very close to having, we had Chagas, we had Board BIA, we had ICBF working to give us an indicative price for the beef industry based on the markets in which we were supplying. We were working hard to get that put in place. We were very, very close to getting it, and then it just fell apart. We need that put in place.
And what about the farm organisation's role in that? And I know, as you said, with the budget yesterday, we did see the announcement of the beef environmental efficiency pilot scheme, 20 million in that to help alleviate the challenges the beef sector is facing, and to also improve the genetic merit of the herd. But from a farm organisation point of view, do you think there is a strong plan in place for beef currently?
I think there's a fear factor there of engaging with the meat industry. I think that has to be got rid of. I think it has to be a trust, has to be built there, and that's difficult. It's a very difficult industry to, you're dealing with individuals, individual companies. They're not cooperatives. So from that point of view, it's difficult to get cooperation between them all and trust between them all. But unless we get to a stage where there's a reasonable return to the farmer, and that everybody is working towards a plan where they've got the right product going out at the other end to the retailer, it's going to be very hard to make it profitable. But just one point you made there was with the genomic scheme and the beef genomic scheme. That's a scheme which I believe will help massively with the efficiency within the suckler herd. It needs to be developed. That doesn't necessarily mean there'll be more output, but I think what it means is the animals within it will be more efficient.
So what was your view on the €200 per cow suckler payment? Do you think, was that a runner in your view?
It's still, look, there's more support needed there. It needs to be targeted support. It needs to be targeted through something to the genomic scheme in order to make the industry more efficient. Whatever helps to make the industry more efficient is very important. The pig industry, the poultry industry, the dairy industry, the tillage industry, they've all engaged with genomics, they've all engaged with better plant breeding, they've all engaged in this area, and they're much more efficient than they were 30 years ago. The suckler herd hasn't moved dramatically in those areas. It needs to take a dramatic step forward and has to be science-based.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Eddie, you also mentioned about farm organisations looking to maybe other farm lobby groups around the world for, for some inspiration on how they can move forward. Where are you seeing farm orgs that are really kind of at the top of their game at the moment, and that are changing, that are developing and moving with the current times?
When you go around the world and you look at, and I visit a lot of these farm organisations, when you go around the world, when you talk to them, when you look at how they're structured, a lot of them have add-on businesses which bring in money for the farm organisation and help to fund it, but they also gives benefits to the members right down through the system. We have that to some extent in IFA, and that IFA is a purchasing group or a buying group for ESB services, telephone services. Some people don't like that. Some people see that as a negative and think IFA are distracting themselves. That's not the case. It's a way in which IFA can become independent and can fund itself independently. That's very important that farmers support that, because it will leave us independent of the levy system with the factories, which a lot of people like to criticise. The reality is the same people criticise the levy as criticise the phones. So you've got to find a way to fund an organisation. That's critically important. The organisations around the world, they used to look to IFA, they used to look to Ireland to see how we were running our operations. Now we need to go back and look at them and see what they've done and how they've run their businesses.
Anywhere in particular, anyone?
You don't take anywhere in particular when you're doing something like that. It's a research process. Go everywhere. Look at the Italians, look at the Germans, look at the Scandinavians, the NFU in Britain. It has a huge insurance company. The Cattlemen's Association in America, it has a huge insurance company. All of those contribute to the funding of the farm of the organisation, and that helps it to be more efficient and helps it to lobby better.
We saw in the VT there earlier, Eddie, that there is mixed confidence when people are asked straight out if they believe in the ability of farm organisations to lobby on their behalf and to achieve the results that they want. Would you encourage young people, yourself, your own son? Would you encourage family members or friends, young people, to get involved in IFA, and why?
Well, absolutely. First of all, yes, I would encourage everybody to get involved in farm organisations. I think you've got to educate yourself. It's a massive opportunity to get educated because there's good speakers coming to meetings. Listen to them, listen to what they're doing, why they're saying what they're saying. It's so easy to be on in a mart or in wherever at a pub having given out about something, but it's much more difficult when you get involved and try to resolve the problems. And I think that's the challenge that's there. Young people absolutely should get involved. They really need this information. They've got the education from Teagasc, they've got the education from the ag colleges, but now they actually need the education for life as to how and why the political system operates. I got involved in IFA 30 years ago. I got involved because I didn't understand what APS meant, which was aids to private storage. It was a system that was in place at the time. I lost 10 cents a kilo, or a pound, sorry, on cattle at that time because I didn't sell them in time, simply because I didn't understand the system. That was a sore lesson. I got involved in IFA, and I educated myself in the process in between.
Eddie, we've seen you speaking at a lot of events recently, back out there on the front line. Do you have any future ambitions within the IFA yourself, or what are your future ambitions for your place within the sector based on the knowledge that you have honed over the last 3 decades?
Well, I have very serious ambitions within IFA. That's to be a good, solid member of it. And I intend to be a very good, solid member of it, and to make sure the organisation does the best it possibly can. And I will do that without, as a member. As regards other ambitions, no, it's purely accidental. I went to Waterford. That's my wife's home county. I considered my second home. and there are a lot of very good friends of mine there. And I got a phone call from the county chairman, Kevin Kearsey, a good friend, and he just said, listen, would you do that meeting? And I said yes. And it's the only other meeting apart from being at my own county executives. The fact that I'm here talking to you today is purely because I got asked a question by a young farmer about the future of farmer organisations, and you wanted to do an interview based on that. So, I'm just do what I do.
Eddie, thank you very much for coming into us. We'll leave it there. That's all we have time for this week's episode of FarmLand. A big thanks to all our guests for joining us and to our sponsors, Homeland. If you would like to get in touch with the FarmLand or AgriLand teams, you can call us or contact us on our social media pages. We hope to see you again. Goodbye.